Well, it's the middle of November, and today's order of business was working on cleaning out my Alpine shed here and reorganizing things so that the things I don't need to get to easily can be stuffed, trapped in the back, while the stuff that I need to be able to move around is more near the front. I'm going to get my lawnmowers out of the weather and under cover, and so I had to reorganize the way things were moved around here. And then I realized there's several things in here that have been sitting in here that I want to get down in the basement, and one of which was the tailstock for the Hendy. Underneath that right there is the 4-jaw chuck for the Hendy. This is the gearbox and motor bracket assembly for the Vernon Lathe. I want to get this down there, but this is really, it's kind of heavy and it's kind of cumbersome because of the way it's all put together and the way that that whole bracket assembly swivels right here in this section on this rod. So what I want to do is, it's also this bracket right here that was looks like it was homemade to hold the shields for the actual belt drive from the motor, and got a nice drum switch on there. But anyways, got all that stuff, so I'm going to take this bracket off so it's not sticking out off the side here, and then we're going to take these little Allen screws, set screws out. That should allow us to drive this rod out and separate this bracket motor mount right there from the rest of the gearbox. And I may have to take that pulley off depending on how things work out. Alright, we've got the bracket off, but I completely removed the set screws, and the problem is to remove that rod, it can't go out in this direction because it's going to hit the pulley. So it's got to go out in this direction, but I can't put a drift on there and hit it with a hammer to knock it out because the pulley's in the way. So not even the edge is showing, so I'm going to have to take this pulley off. I was actually hoping to avoid that, but I guess we'll do it. I've never seen anything like this, the way that's on there. Don't understand exactly how that works. I don't know whether or not this pulley was reclaimed from something else and it didn't have a keyway, so somebody rigged up a deal where they've got this plate has a keyway in it and then this plate is bolted to the pulley that doesn't. Don't know, but for starters we'll take these 3 bolts out and see what that does for us. Well, this is interesting. I couldn't get a gear puller on here, so I noticed that there were a couple of threaded holes in this thing here and here that the bolts that came out of these other holes fit into. So I realized that if I push the if I thread those bolts into here and force them, that I should be able to get this to pop off, or so I thought. And I put some force on one of the bolts, and then I used this big blunt wedge chisel and got it to pop loose, only instead of this popping off the shaft, the whole pulley actually popped off. This whole piece right here appears to be keyed to the shaft, and then is actually, its purpose is to be like an arbor for this big pulley. So, well, now that I have the that makes me wonder though, what the heck is supposed to hold that on the shaft? I'm wondering if I push this pulley all the way over out of the way, whether or not I'd be able to see if there's a yeah, right there. I wonder if that's a locking Allen screw, a set screw or something right there. I could put a puller on here now because I've got this bigger space. My jaws will fit behind there, but I don't really want to be pulling on it if it's locked. Alright, well, I couldn't see what was holding this on, locking this on, so I just put my big puller on it, and it came off pretty easily. Once I get it apart, I'll be able to see the anatomy of how this is put together. I just slid this pulley back out. I can see a piece of key stock there on the shaft, so that's actually keyed to the shaft, but I still don't understand exactly what locks this outer pulley on. Alright, well, this outer pulley is locked to this by the 3 bolts we removed. This is locked to the shaft. It's keyed to the shaft. But what keeps this from being able to slide off the shaft, other than just being a press fit, is what I don't understand. I would expect a set screw somewhere. Now that I get this inner part pulled off, part of the shaft kind of stopped again. So then I just push this pulley back, and now I've got the pulley almost off that way, and I can see that this is a big, looks like a big Woodruff key. So that's key to that. But as I rotate this around, I do not see any set screws or anything to indicate what would keep this locked on there from sliding off. I guess maybe it's just a press fit. Alright, well, we got everything off, and what we discovered is that this is a pulley with a very big bore that is keyed to this part right here, this hub. There's the key. And then this hub presses onto that shaft, and it's keyed to the shaft. And there is nothing on here to lock it on the shaft as far as keeping it from being able to come off of that. But it almost looks to me like this is tapered. And I think what happens is, I think that as you tighten these bolts, I got the pulley upside down here, but essentially I think this is a tapered fit in here. And I think that when you tighten the bolts down, I think that actually pushes this in and actually squeezes that gap that's cut in here. Squeezes that gap down and actually is what tightens it on the shaft. So I think that's how that works. That's kind of neat, actually, now that I see it. I thought it was some kind of cobbled together homemade deal, but it seems a little too intricate to be cobbled together and homemade. The other question I had, actually my son, my 9-year-old son pointed out, these little holes that are drilled all along part of the arc of the circle of this pulley, and he asked me what those were for, and I have absolutely no idea. I don't know whether or not that's a way of balancing the pulley by removing a little bit of metal and changing the weight characteristics or something, but if anybody could tell me what those holes are for, let me know, and I'll pass on the information to him. Alright, now with that pulley out of the way, I can easily, using my homemade drift pin, this is actually an old junky reamer, and I'm pushing this pin out that way, so that'll separate this shelf assembly that I want to get off of here. And I'm going to make a note that there are 2 large washers and 1 small washer that's kind of being used as a shim type of deal in there, and then there's 1 large and 1 small on this side. So there's 1 large and 1 small on the side that has the leather belt attached, and then 2 large and 1 small on the side that has the V-belt pulley. Oh, gotta get the Vernon Lathe out of the way here. Reposition my strap, hoping maybe I can actually lift this whole thing and spin it onto the legs and then roll it around on this crane. Can't even walk around. Right now I moved the welder, the big air co, out of the corner there so that I could put the end of the lathe over there. So now that welder's too close to the milling machine, so I can't work on putting the head back together on the mill. Eventually this will all get sorted out. I'm going to move these cabinets I've got up against the wall there and clear that wall space, and that's, I think, where I'm going to end up setting up this Vernon lathe. Yeah, I hate how that's so... It's got too much weight up here with the gearbox and everything, so it's not lifting straight. If I can get this chain off of the end. Oh, if only this chain was a little bit longer. It still ain't doing what I want to do. do that either. Not like that. Get this into here more on this end. Let's see now if I pull this back down. Son of a gun. Didn't want to do that. Well, I can move it that way. I mean, I could roll it this way. Not really what I wanted to do. The weight's just not where I expect it to be. Okay. Welding extension cord that's on the ground over here and stick on the wheel. Okay, good. What the? How the hell did they do that? Just bit the heck out of the front of the welder. What the heck was that? This must have been open, and this leg must have come up at some point and got underneath here and pushed this up. Oh. In other words, that's not supposed to look like that. They did a good job on that.